Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. I want to talk a little bit about what I call black belt understanding. First off, I meant to start off by saying I just put something up over on Patreon that I'm not going to put here probably for quite some time, if ever. It has to do with, well, I can't even tell you what it has to do with, but if you're interested in what's going on in our world right now and what's going on in our country, you should go watch it. If you're not over on Patreon yet, you should go over there. The title of it is Secret Ways, and we're going to be discussing things over there that we're not going to be here. I do suggest this is for people who can listen between the lines, who really are thinkers and are giving some thought to what's going on. So I'll put the link down below here. If you're not with me over there on Patreon yet, I would suggest this is the time to get over there, and I look forward to having you if that's your interest. Okay, back to black belt understanding. Most of you, if you've watched me a little bit, know that I taught martial arts for quite a while. There was a time, many moons ago, maybe, I don't know, 30 years ago. One night I was teaching a class at a gym that I owned, and it was I'm sorry if I keep looking over there. I'm looking at a picture on the wall, which reminds me of something. It was a night of white belt testing for a new group. In my system, it was for first came, which is Irish for level. It was just kind of a time after somebody's been there for a month or two, they learn the basics, and this is when I see whether or not they're going to be worth, staying around to learn more, whether they pay attention, whether they have the basic interest for me to spend more time on them. Because I didn't teach just anybody who came in and wrote me a check, If they weren't worth the teaching, I wasn't going to teach them. There's plenty of other places they could go, and it'd be better for both of us if they went someplace else if they weren't willing to put in the work and the mental effort as well. So anyway, I was holding a white belt test, and I think there was 5 or 6 people in the white belt. And so we ran through those, and there was another more advanced group over in another part of the gym working on other things being taught by my more senior instructors. And so, but I always liked to take care of the first came myself, because this is when they first were entering the system, and I wanted to get to know what they were about. If they were going to come through the system, I wanted to have a sense of who they were and what they were about. So anyway, I got done with them. They all, as far as I recall, passed. It wasn't that difficult. It was just kind of getting to know you kind of level. And as far as I recall, they all did fine. And so afterwards, I told them to take a few minutes and relax for a few minutes. I was going to go over and talk to the more advanced people, see what they were doing. And I walked over to my office, and then as I was walking back across the floor, I heard them. For some reason, it made me ask them what they were talking about. And one of them said, "Well, we've learned so much in the first level, we can't wait to see what techniques we learn in black belt." Well, they shouldn't even have been thinking about that, because black belt is years down the road for any legitimate system, any legitimate school. But my immediate response to them was, don't worry about black belt techniques. Worry about black belt understanding. And they didn't understand what I was talking about. And I didn't take the time to explain it to them, because that's up to them to stick it out and, learn. Anyway, so I told them to relax for a little bit, and I went over to the other group. I was over there at the more advanced group for a few minutes, and all of a sudden I heard this scream coming from the white belt group. I looked over there, and there's one of them was sitting on the floor holding his foot and his leg. And so I went over there. I said, what's going on? And he was just, he couldn't talk, you know. And he was holding his foot and his ankle and everything. So I said, well, you know, let me see. So I kind of took his foot, and then he just about screamed. And then I held him by the lower calf, and I saw his foot just droop over like that. I said, what was he doing? And one of them said, well, he was trying to do the technique that he saw the advanced group doing, which at the time was a spinning hook kick, what I call a closing hook kick. And he was trying to do that and came down and twisted his ankle or something. Well, later on, I let him sit there in the middle of the floor for the rest of the class. And he's a good kid. He sucked it up and sat there. He couldn't get up on it. I finally took him to the hospital afterwards, and he had broken both the tibia and the fibula of his whatever, right leg, left leg, doesn't matter. He'd broken both of those bones. The reason that he did that is because he was in a hurry to try to learn what he saw more advanced people doing. And he was trying to do it without an understanding and a competency of the more basic elements that would have allowed him to do it properly and therefore safely. That's kind of what I was talking about. It's one of those instant karma things, right? It's kind of what I was talking about. Don't worry about black belt techniques. Worry about black belt understanding. If you go through a legitimate martial arts program, and I don't mean the little strip mall pajama dancing places that you see around where a 12-year-old can get a black belt, but if you go through a legitimate system at a legitimate school, which there are very few of, you would know it takes a long time to go up through the ranks. And different systems have different ranking systems. A friend of mine has one that I know people have been there 20 years, and they're still green belts. Okay. Why? Because they haven't progressed to black belt. Because black belt means something. It means something that those outside the system don't understand. And it means, and it's not understood because of the commercialization in the Western world of the martial arts. Now, you know, the idea of the black belt, I'll throw in just a little bit of history here, I guess. Every society has had a martial system. Every society has had martial arts. The reason that we associate martial arts mainly with the Oriental systems is because shortly after World War II and definitely after the Vietnam War, martial arts just exploded across the United States. I mean, you couldn't walk down the street without tripping over a Taekwondo school, you know, because, well, that's a different story. I won't tell you why. Maybe I'll talk about that again. But in the old ways, if you go back to Japan and Okinawa, and I was not, even though I started a couple of the Japanese systems, I was not a Japanese or an Okinawan stylist. The reason that the belts were black or came to be known as black is because everybody started off with a belt, just a belt, a white belt. Now, this goes way back. And you didn't wash your belt because there was this idea that you would wash the knowledge out of your belt. Okay, so you'd wash your gi and you'd wash all this. Well, over the years, you kept the same belt. Well, over the years, that belt got darker and darker and darker and darker. Okay, therefore, kind of this idea of the black belt. Yeah. Here in the United States, there's not an understanding of this. I had a And I'm going to show you how this comes back to preparedness here pretty quick. I had a guy I knew, a doctor, came up to me one day, and he knew that I was involved in the martial arts. It's been some time ago. And he came to me all excited. He says he was going over to watch the black belt test of the son of a friend of his. And he was very excited to go see it. He didn't know anything about the martial arts. He was very excited to go see this. I said, well, that's good. That's great. That really takes something to become a black belt, because I was thinking a legitimate black belt. I said, well, that's great. How long's he been in it? Oh, he's been in it. Oh, gosh, since he was, I don't know, since he was 8, right? I said, wow, So I'm thinking, well, the guy's, he's probably in his 20s if he's testing for black belt. Quite a bit, quite a lot. I said, well, that's a lot of years. The guy says, yes, he's been doing it for 4 years. I said, he's 12? Yeah. And I don't remember, I probably, made some disgusting face or comment. He said, well, what's wrong? I says, you gotta be kidding me. He's 12 years old and he's gonna test for black belt? Oh, yeah. I mean, he knows all the stuff. He says it's pretty impressive. I said, well, not to rain on your parade, but I find that insulting. Well, what do you mean? He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, how would you like it if I went down to a strip mall here and I rented out a little place, and I got myself a white coat and a little black bag and a stethoscope, and I opened up Steve Smith's medical school. And everybody could bring their kids up, and as long as your checks don't bounce, for a couple, 3 years, I'll make your little 12-year-old a doctor. I'll certify him as an MD. How would you feel about that? And he kind of, well, that's just ridiculous. It's not the same thing. I said, well, why isn't this the same thing? Well, because I studied hard, I worked hard, I studied for years and years and years, to become a doctor and all that. I says, well, do you know what it takes to be a legitimate black belt in a legitimate system? Well, I mean, he has to do the same things all the adults do. I says, yeah, well, more's the pity that the level of expectation for adults is as low as so low that a 12-year-old would be able to satisfy those requirements. Well, we talked for a few minutes, and I think I made him somewhat understand, but I'm sure not, because most people don't. We live in a world of immediate gratification. We want it now. We're more concerned as a society, as a civilization, of acting like we're something than being something. We're more concerned with having the patch or the t-shirt than having actually done or mastered the thing that patch or t-shirt is supposed to represent. We are concerned with celebrity. We're concerned with how things look as opposed to how things are. And I could go on and on about this in the martial arts, because most of the so-called martial arts out there have little to do with real martial skills. But I won't. I see this a lot in preparedness. I see the people buying all the stuff. They got the newest of this and the best of that. They can rattle off the specs on every gun, scope, knife, flashlight, whatever that they've got or they want. They look great from the outside to those who don't know any better. They're living life on the surface of preparedness without even understanding the depth that true preparedness would take them to, and the depth of understanding, the amount of work, the amount of study, the amount of thought, the amount of preparedness that it takes to truly be prepared. They're playing preparedness. Mrs. Johnson, can Johnny come out and play preparedness? I've got all my stuff. Does Johnny have all his stuff? When reality comes around, all those toys mean very little. And I'll take that back to the martial arts again. I did it for a long time. I also lived a lifestyle that allowed me to test and see what kind of things actually worked and what didn't work in the real world. Sometimes on a nightly basis. And you know how many times I used a tricky little flippy-dippy technique that worked? I can't remember one. The things that are practiced past a certain level are not brought into play when reality comes knocking. What works are the basics. Well, if the basics work, then why do we train and study all this other stuff? Because to become adept at more advanced tactics and techniques strengthens our ability to call upon them in the rare occasion that we might be able to use them, but more importantly, to be able to execute the basics. And where the understanding comes in has nothing to do with the technique or the piece of gear. The understanding comes into understanding the situation. In a personal combative situation, that means, feet on the street. What's going on? How is this developing? What's your environment? What's happening, and what do you need to do in relation to that? In preparedness, it means understanding what's happening, what's about to happen, what you need to do to mitigate, avoid, whatever, some negative consequences from what's about to happen. I think that looking at preparedness, it's very much like the martial arts student, the beginning martial arts student. If you look at a beginning martial arts student and you look at an extremely advanced martial arts practitioner, you'll immediately notice a difference. Focus and what they seem to be interested in. Okay. Now here I don't mean kata. I don't mean the dancing stuff. We didn't have kata in my system. We fought. Okay. When we learned things, I didn't have them go out there and do some pre-choreographed movements to show that they would know how to do anything. I'd say, okay, get out there and fight. And you're going to come back from that fight with a good idea of how much you know and how much you don't know. But when you look at a new student and an advanced practitioner, the new student is in a hurry to learn and do the next thing. The advanced practitioner is not in a hurry at all, but is patiently continuing to practice and develop his basics. If hard times are coming, and I think they are, you want to have a rock hard, rock steady grasp on the basics. You want to be ready. You want to understand what's happening, not just be surrounded by your gear in confusion when it happens. You want to be able to live without all that stuff. Now, I'm not saying, some of the stuff is cool. I don't have advanced stuff. I'll tell you right now. It doesn't draw me. It doesn't attract me. There's no reason that I need a jet boil stove when I can start a fire, in a little hole in the ground. And I'm sure that people say, yeah, but if you're, whatever. Yeah, well, I know whatever. I just want to survive and deal with the situation. But you want a rock solid understanding. You want a black belt understanding of preparedness, of survival, of the world. If you don't understand the world, you're not going to understand what the world's bringing to you sometimes. Okay? So, you want to have some of the gewgaws and stuff? Okay. But I tell you what, your money would be better spent, and your time, doing other things, and that's just working on the basics. But work on that. Turn back around. Stop being so excited about all the gear. The latest this, the latest that. Turn your mind around. Turn your attention around. Make yourself understand that hard times may really be coming. And what it takes is a hardcore internal. So that is my advice for new people and intermediate people and, even some advanced people. Maybe I'm sure most of you advanced people are just nodding your head. That's right. For you newer people and intermediate people who think that next piece of gear is going to make you all the better, tell you what, the next piece of knowledge would make you a lot better than that next piece of gear. So practice, study, learn, develop the basics over and over and over until you get to the point that when you need to do it, you don't have to think about it. You just do it. Okay? Okay, well, I'll leave you with that. I'll remind you again, something over on Patreon you might be interested to see. Put the link down here. But remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And your most important preparation is what you know and what you can do, not what you have. Okay? Y'all have a good day. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.